want to welcome to the program a really interesting guy. Great story to tell. He's been on our radar for a while. He's running for Congress in it's going to be a really competitive race. And it's one of those districts that can go either way, might be a majority maker. But this guy's up to the task. Derrick Anderson, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, gents. Appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, I mean, listen to this. I've got calls coming in. I've already unprofessional start that I've got going on. Look, tell us a little bit about your story, because not everybody knows it. It has been sort of international news in who you are and how you came about being interested in politics and your service and everything else. But why don't we get it directly from you?
Yeah, we were joking right beforehand. You get out on the campaign trail and you get 30 seconds. It's like, tell me why you're running for Congress. And you're like, well, there's a lot of things.
Right.
But, one of the things that really kind of hit me was the withdrawal in Afghanistan. And specifically for me, if you trace my story back, not only just the fact that, I'm from Spotsylvania County, that's my home district. My mom owned, I always try to be PC about it. She owned restaurants that just so happen to have a bar next to it.
Yeah.
And so, that's where I worked growing up.
Yeah.
It's kind of awesome being on the campaign trail and you're walking around, they're like, I think your mom might have kicked me out of the bar one or two times. I'm like, yeah, I probably remember that, my man.
It checks.
Yeah, it checks out. But, I ended up going, I was the first college graduate in my family. I went to Virginia Tech. Thank God my mom is a wonderful woman and pushed me in that direction because, my senior year in high school was 9/11.
Yeah.
So, initially my first reaction was, nope, I'm going into the military. I'm going to serve. And my mom was like, no, you're not. You're going to Virginia Tech. Well, there was a few options, but Virginia Tech ended up being it because they had the Corps Cadets there.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually a really good thing for me growing up. But, I ended up going into the infantry afterwards, went with 3rd ID, did 15 months in Iraq as part of the surge, which was...
Yeah, that's wild.
15 months is a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really a really long time. I thought about getting out after that, and I ended up...
I imagine just pure fatigue.
15 months was just like brutal. And, we lost... I was first platoon leader. My roommate was second platoon leader. They lost an entire squad in an IED attack. They lost quite a few folks. And so I came back. I kind of reset. I went to the Old Guard over at Arlington National Cemetery, which was really awesome. Like it was one of those places I always tell people, it's not a lot of people are like, it must have been when you were a Green Beret was your best time in the service. It was. That was the most cool stuff I did. It was the most fun. But when I talked about like what you have like a sense of pride.
Yeah.
It's like doing funerals in Arlington National Cemetery, being able to lay someone's loved one down to rest for the final time and doing it perfect was like something that meant something to me.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting.
I was in this crossroads in life, was thinking about going to law school. And then I got the letter in the mail literally the week I was supposed to take the LSAT. And it said, you want to go to selection for the Green Berets? And I was like, yeah, why not? So I did that instead of taking the LSAT.
The test will be around anytime.
Yeah, it'll be around. So I did that, ended up passing, going through the 2-ish years of the Q course, and then showed up to 5th Special Forces Group, and I deployed with them 5 times. So
Jeez.
I was fortunate. I did some really cool missions. Went to Bahrain, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and Afghanistan. And then this kind of rolls into the story. My team and I were on my Green Beret team and I were on our last mission in Afghanistan. We were split up in 3 different spots in this valley in an area called Arghandab. And so one of our positions started getting shot at from about 2 or 3 locations. And as that happened, we started, a B-1 bomber had come on station. We were assuming that it was going to be an AC-130, which those things are amazing. You ever seen the videos of them? They essentially shoot like mortars from the sky.
Right.
It's pretty wild. So bottom line is we end up calling in close air support. We're wearing IR strobes on the top of our helmets. And that's how we're identifying ourselves. Can you see IR strobe here? Yes. Okay, go this distance direction. That's where bad guys are. Well, they ended up dropping 2 500-pound bombs on what they thought was bad guys, and it was on our team in Afghanistan, killing 5 other guys in 1 Afghan. So, fast forward a little bit, we redeploy fairly quickly from Afghanistan. We go to the funerals of our guys. We're still trying to figure out what the heck actually happened.
Yeah.
We had been interviewed by some folks. Generally speaking, the chain of command was like, hey, there was an issue with the aircraft. Don't worry about it. And we said, okay, we'll continue marching on. And then that was in 2014, 9 June 2014 was when my guys were killed. And then fast forward a couple of months and I get, the letter that nobody wants, and I got called to the man's office, and it said, we're recommending relief of command for you. And I was sitting back like, what is going on right now?
Yeah.
And so eventually they put an Air Force general in charge of an Air Force plane dropping on Army guys on the ground. investigation was really long, hundreds of pages long. I ended up dissecting it, and I was like, whoa, there's an issue here. The airplane that said it could see the strobes on our helmets can't.
Couldn't.
It was in the manuals that it could. The Air Force thought it could. The pilots thought it could. Everyone thought it could, but it couldn't.
Wow.
And so instead of rectifying and going after that problem, they essentially said, you guys on the ground should have known better. The guys on the ground,
you should have known the aircraft capabilities.
Known it better than the Air Force and the Air Force pilots. So
I remember this. There was a whole 60 minutes they did on this.
So yeah, so fast forward, I ended up going after, I wrote a rebuttal. It's like 30 plus pages, and I pretty much went down the line of every single inaccuracy, deficiency in this report, and I sent it to my chain of command. There was some, consternation amongst the chain of command of what was going on. And I pretty much put I poked the DOD in the eye. I said, this is wrong. Yeah. You guys, there's a problem, inherent issue with this aircraft. You're not willing to address it. Instead, you want to go and push it down onto the guys.
Yeah.
As we've seen over the years, that's not something new that we've seen, but it was something new to me. And so Christmas Eve 2014, distinctly remember it. I was visiting my mom in Spotsylvania. I was on block leave. And I got the phone call that said, hey, no administrative or disciplinary action is going to happen to you. And I was like,
bet that was a relief.
It was. But then I came back after block leave in January and said, so what are you going to do to fix it?
Yeah.
They were not happy with that, needless to say. So
this guy won't go away.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, I go back, I ended up deploying to Lebanon and Israel as after that. There was all these talks. Well, this was on them. I was like, you put me as the second in command of the company after that, and redeployed me 2 times. If I was such a terrible commander, what the hell? Like, what is going on here?
Your decision making is even worse than I thought.
I was like, this is insane. So I ended up, I had a, and thank God for this gentleman, but he's a former Green Beret, 2-star general, and an attorney here in D.C. He represented me pro bono the whole time.
Wow.
Him and a team of attorneys helped me out, and he pretty much looked at me and he said, hey man, what are you going to do next? Because, you punched the DOD in the face and told them they were wrong.
Yeah.
And during that period when all that was going down, that my lawyer actually had me come up to D.C. And I met with members of Congress on both the House and the Senate side. Some conversations went well. Yeah. Some conversations didn't. And that was kind of my first impression. That was my first time. Like, I never sat in a room with a member of Congress. I was going to say,
you probably weren't inherently very political.
No. I mean, admittedly, like, I walked in there, I had to go dig a suit out, that I usually take overseas to go into, at embassies, usually when I have one. And I got into some heated debates with some members and their staff. And a matter of fact, there's one individual, I won't name him, but
we're cool if you do that.
Yeah. There was one specifically, Virginia, that literally his staffer was like, well, we got a lot of things going on right now. We have an election coming up. We have a lot of things. This is just not in our prerogative. Oh. And I was like, I'm your constituent, man.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I'm your guy. I'm one of your people. And he pretty much said, like, sorry. And he actually, I was very heated, and I ended up being like, he said, this meeting's over. So I walked out, and he chased me down the hallway and said, thank you for your service, whatever, and walked away. And then there was a woman, and I'll name her because she's awesome, Senator Kelly Ayotte. She came and helped me out. Like, she was amazing, amazing person, had my side, was behind me the whole time. So anyways, that was my first taste. That was my first taste of politics. I never really heard anything about it. And then, to your point earlier, I ended up going to law school, and I'm a second year, dreary-eyed, drinking coffee, trying to stay awake in class type thing, trying to get through law school. And 60 Minutes called me and said, hey, do you want to go on 60 Minutes and tell your side of the story? I said, absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
I really do, because I want something to happen. And so went on 60 Minutes, did that, and then one of my Green Beret buddies was, again, working up on the Hill. He said, hey, you got everyone's attention now. One of the guys lied on national TV, the Air Force general. So they're like, you got everyone's attention, so if you want, write something up. Yeah. So I started writing white papers to the House Armed Services Committee, and eventually we started getting language into the NDAA that was saying, hey, what do you guys do in DOD to fix this problem? What's next? And so it's hard to tell that story, like I was saying, in 30 seconds when you're talking to someone. But, when I saw what happened in Afghanistan, that kind of was the tipping point for me. Yeah. I was like, this is not good. How the situation was handled was not good. I'd gone to a wedding shortly after that, another one of my Green Beret buddies, and he had a few buddies that were actually on the ground in Afghanistan, like throwing equipment back on the airplanes as they were trying to get out of there. So, man, it was pretty disastrous. And so, I did some internal soul searching. I said, I want to do something. Like, I want to do something to continue serving. Yeah. And so, I decided to run in 22.
It's wild.
And that's
right?
and that's how it happened.
Yeah.
It literally happened. I said, I'm going to think about this for a month, and then I jumped in and did it.
Well, I think the coolest part about all of that, and I'm glad you told the full story because it's an important context to why you're here in the first place. The coolest part about it is you're doing it not because you're particularly maybe partisan motivated personally, but you want to change, which is really why anybody should run for office, right? You want to change, sought it, were successful in a personal capacity, and then understood that you could do that in a larger way of representing people you grew up with.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the coolest parts about this, too, is this is one of my funniest campaign stories of 22 is I'm knocking on doors in Spotsylvania, actually in the neighborhood directly next to my high school. And one of my ex-girlfriends, granted, it was a wild story. She's a wonderful woman. Her family's wonderful. I met her when I was actually stationed at Fort Campbell, ran into her and was like, we're both from Spotsylvania County. This is amazing. Ended up dating her for a while, and we still remain friends. And I got a text message from my friend, my ex-girlfriend, and she said, did you just knock on my parents' front door?
It's like, what are you doing here,
and I was
man?
like, I got my stuff. I'm out there just knocking on doors. It's just me. I had a campaign manager. He was somewhere else doing it, and I was like knocking on doors. And all of a sudden I go, I might have. I'm in your parents' neighborhood. I don't know if they still live here or not. She goes, my dad just got out of the shower. He's coming to find you. And I was like, oh God.
Let's make sure he puts some clothes on.
And he's a great guy. And he rolls up in his pickup truck. And he's like, hello, Mr. Anderson. And I was like, hey, Mr. So-and-so. And he's like, you need a water? And I was like, am I going to make it out of that truck if I get in with you? And he goes, yeah, you'll make it out of here. Come on, man. So it was awesome. We sat there and it's awesome to run into people like that. Not many people can have that opportunity to genuinely be able to say, like, I represent the people that raised me. Like, I represent my mom. I represent my grandparents, my cousins, my uncles. Like, it's going to be like it's truly an honor to be able to do it. So, it's a unique position to be in.
I mean, it's cool. And look, in 22, you took on one of the toughest races in the country.
Yeah.
And had never done it before, which in and of itself says something about your willingness to put yourself out there. This time around, it's open seat, right?
Yeah.
And this was the most expensive House race in the country last cycle, right? It's a Virginia 7.
Yeah, that sounds right up.
And Abigail Spanberger, who's in the seat now currently, is going to be running for governor.
Yep.
Right? So open seat.
An open seat and a guy with name ID all of a sudden, huh?
Yeah.
I feel like you probably learned a few things first time around.
Learned a few things. I forget who it was I was talking to the other day, and they said, Derrick, what did you learn? Like, what would you have changed from last time? And to be quite honest, I'm pretty forefront. No one knew who I was when it came to politics. Like, I'd never been involved. I'd been involved in Yunkin stuff, some local stuff here and there, but like I'd never been a candidate. I'd never run for anything before. All of my primary opponents, they were all sitting members or someone who had, sitting state senators, board of supervisors.
Yeah, right. They built up name.
Yeah, they had it, and so I had to come in, and I always, I tell folks, I was like, I had to learn while I was on the go. All of my primary competitors, they knew what they were doing. They've done this before. They knew what worked, what didn't. And pretty much what I ended up seeing very quickly is like the power of hard work. Surprise, actually will do works.
Yeah.
We made it a point that every single day that I would be fundraising during the day, and then in the afternoon I would go to a neighborhood close to wherever the local GOP is or a restaurant or what have you. Go knock on 20 or 30 doors, then go to the GOP meeting, try to swing by another restaurant. There's a Waffle House down in Spotsylvania that knows me very well because me and my campaign manager would come back at midnight and be like, we haven't eaten dinner.
Yeah.
And so we were just hanging out at the Waffle House.
That's the wildest thing about a congressional campaign is your day will be so packed with events and things that you'll just forget to eat sometimes.
All the time.
It's just late hours.
All the time.
And you'll realize, you'll be like, I don't feel good. Why don't I feel, I haven't eaten.
Yeah.
In like 72 hours.
Holmes used to just work on Diet Mountain Dew. He could drink like a 2-liter of the thing during the day, not eat anything.
Mine was the Wawa Club sandwich and Waffle House. Those are my two things that I'd be able to get fairly quickly and take it home and just power through it and go straight to sleep. Like those are my two things. So
at least you have the preparation for it. Having your military service, it's like, if things are not ideal in the old body, you got to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny though, because I'd see some of my buddies like, man, you're looking kind of skinny. Like, and I was like, yeah, well, I'm knocking on doors. It got to the point where my campaign manager, because I would be out there, I'd run to the car, grab a bottle of water, and jump back out there, and he's like, your face is bright red.
You're scaring them.
Did you put
Derrick.
any sunblock on, man? And I'm like, nope, I didn't. I had no sunblock on, and my face was toasted. And so I'd always walk around, my campaign manager and my team would be like, where's your sunblock? Where's your sunblock? And they still to this day, they'll text me if I'm going to go knock on door. Where's your sunblock at? Make sure you got your sunblock. So I toasted myself during the
So
22.
good.
It was
You
wild.
also got to know that a guy's pretty squared away when he's comfortable knocking on ex-girlfriends' doors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I could get away with that. I mean, this guy's going door to door, every door in the district, it sounds like.
We knocked a lot. But I mean, that's what we figured out, like just going, surprise, going out and just being
people.
around people. We used to go to restaurants and just, hey, do you mind if I walk around and say hi to people?
Yeah.
They'd be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They'd have, a philanthropic event. Do you mind if I just want to come hang out if that's all right? And so I think that was really the kind of the power of our campaign in 22 is, for somebody who did not, have any name recognition or didn't have any name ID as far as it came politically, I think that really helped us out on the ground, which is beating feet and getting out there and meeting people. That's it. I mean, that's what it came down to. And I think, a lot of folks in the district also saw it too, is like we were willing to work. Like I think there's a lot of people go up to DC and go to, become a member in one way or another. And it's like a popularity. They kick their feet up after they get up there and they say, well, I made it. Like, that's not how our mentality is. Like, my team has been 100%. Like, we're going to work our tails off. We're going to prove to people that we're willing to work when we get up there.
Yeah, nobody's going to want it more.
No.
I want to ask you about current events because you mentioned your time in Israel. Mm-hmm. I know you had some experience with the IDF.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts on what's happening there.
Yeah, so, a lot of folks. So I went there, and I think it was 2016, roughly around that time frame. I went there. Pretty much, it was kind of cool. We did a thing where we trained with the Israeli Defense Forces, some of their special operations guys and gals, and then we brought some of them over here, and we did some training, some just concurrent training, essentially. The organization that we were working with was essentially like their version of EOD, like the explosives people, which also incorporates the tunnel people. Like they have an actual unit for the tunnels.
I imagine.
Yeah,
it's
and
a huge deal.
So we spent a lot of time. We got to go to a few of their bases. And I actually, when I was in law school, I went there on another trip with them as well, and I got to see a whole bunch of really cool stuff just in my civilian capacity, not in my military. But one of the things that was that always just caught me like by guard, like off guard and by surprise was. I remember going in and talking with the IDF commander. I think he was a captain at the time. And him and I were talking. And at the time, Syria was kicking off. ISIS was, peeking their heads over in the borders of Israel and Lebanon and some of these other countries. And so it was one of those things a lot of times where you're talking to the IDF and you're like, well, why don't you do this? And you're trying to give them advice, or at least, hey, this is how we would look at things. And I remember distinctly the IDF commander being like, sometimes you Americans just don't understand it. And I was like, oh, well, what do you mean? He's like, you have to understand right now, because one of the things we asked him about was Hezbollah. So this is great. Hezbollah's not pointing their weapons at you. They're too busy worried about ISIS. They don't like ISIS. That's a good thing for everyone, right? And he said, that's the 50-meter target, right? You guys don't see it. Then in a few years from now, something's going to pop off. And Hezbollah has now been funded, and now they're trained because they were fighting ISIS. And where do you think those weapons are going to turn back to? Us. He goes, what about, all of these other organizations that are out there? Right now, they're all focused on ISIS. You guys forget that in a couple years from now, those crosshairs will go right back on us. And it was really something, they all, you hear it in the news quite often, like what would it be like if Mexico or Canada were just lobbing rockets at us every
all
other
the time,
day, right? Like, or they were just like indiscriminately shooting across, which, sometimes they do. But imagine if that was going on a daily basis. Like when I was there with my Georgetown, when I was in law school, some of my law school friends thought it was fireworks going over our heads when we were in the southern part of Israel, and I was like, nope.
Hey, fellas, that ain't
nope. Those are missiles.
Those are live deals.
And so that was one of the things that
it's like that existential mentality, right? I mean, it's always
there.
Yeah.
And like a lot of folks, the big thing I got to see, the other thing that really kind of took me by surprise was the tunnel systems, right? So one of the things they were able to do is they took a map out, and we were in the southern part of Israel looking down into Gaza. So like you could physically look into Gaza, and it's kind of a surreal look because like you can see the kibbutzes, and you can see like where people are eating hummus right down the street. I mean, we went to a restaurant and ate hummus like a few, right near Gaza. And you're looking down into it, and it's just a fence that goes around it, and it's got kind of a no man's land on each side, where it's kind of got a road. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, I got to see Gaza. And they're like, well, let's pull out a map. So they pulled out a map. They started pointing out different buildings. And there was like one building that had like kind of haphazardly UN painted on the side of it and had a few other things. And I was like, well, what's the significance of that? Like, I don't understand it. And they were like, oh, that's where the tunnels are. That's where they start their tunnels at. And at the time, I don't know if they had built the concrete underneath the fence yet or not, but they showed us a whole bunch of videos of some of the tunnels that had gone into Israel. So like they were actually tunnels going into Israel. And I was like, well, what's the issue? And he's like, well, you always hear about the stabbings in Israel. Oftentimes you hear either rockets coming over the border or stabbings. What happens is these guys, this Hamas people, are coming through the tunnels, finding a knife somewhere and just indiscriminately stabbing people in some of these populated areas.
That's just incredible.
It was insane. And
it's
so
wild.
You're watching this and then they show you mock-up tunnels. And these things are, they're very built up. You know, essentially they dig 24/7 and then they drop a concrete barrier in there that's like a U shape, slide it in, keep digging. And so you're like, this is like a legitimate operation here. And so
shows their commitment too.
Shows their commitment, shows that their ability to do it and to go out and do that. So I mean, I think that was the biggest thing since day one, since October 7th. You know, that's always been the thing that kind of sits in the back of my mind is the Israelis have had really good tactics and techniques to take care of these tunnels in the past. You know, they've got liquid foam that can explode. They got liquid foam that just hardens. But when you take that added element of the hostages in, then
now what?
You can't put explosives into a tunnel that potentially has hostages, right? You can't stop the avenue of approach for you to go in there and actually rescue the hostages if it's blocked off. And so that's been really kind of the thing that, you know, I think that the Israelis are having to toil with. It's not an easy task. And as we all know, you know, Hamas can do whatever they want, right? They have done whatever they want.
There's no rules with them.
No rules.
Yeah.
The second the IDF screw up, the second that Israel screws up, they get their thumb gets directly on them. So, you know, they're just in the situation that is just not easy from an international perspective or from a, you know.
Totally.
It's not easy for them.
No, it seems like it's just the worst set of circumstances of all time. And what I find so baffling, and I don't know if you have a perspective on this or not, but I find it so baffling that there are constituencies in this country that honestly think Hamas has got a point of view here.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I mean, it's doesn't it just blow your mind?
Yeah, I mean, especially too when you see where it's happening at, like it's happening at our like schools and institutions of higher level learning.
Yeah,
like, that's what's scary to me. Is like a lot of these people are going to get a Harvard degree or a Yale degree or a degree from somewhere and potentially go on to do big things.
Yeah,
and we're starting to see that. There's something inherently wrong there, where, you know, we are starting to now see the atrocities that, I mean, we've been seeing it for the last, you know, over almost 2 months now, right? And the fact that people can look those, you know, journalists or those people dead in the eye and say, well, that's fake. It never happened. And they bring the media in. You saw Israel brought in the media and said, hey, look, we'll show you firsthand what's going on here. Yeah. And I compare how Hamas uses their political, or sorry, their like public affairs, right? Their PAO, their public affairs, how they put stuff. Hamas literally went in, attacked, killed, burned, did all of the most heinous things in the world to the Israelis, and then drug, you know, 200 plus of them over into Gaza and have been keeping them for, you know, 2 months now, keeping them hostage. We're starting to now hear some of the stories that are coming out. On the other side of the token, you have Israel that's showing videos. I remember when they first started doing some of their raids, they had very, very precise, you know, they had their weapons up. They were body camming, body footage of everything that was going on, showing that they were being discriminate, meaning not shooting into buildings just willy-nilly. They were showing that, you know, the targets that they were targeting were actual Hamas, you know, holding areas, weapons depots, what have you. And then they would actually do warnings. Please leave. We are about to go and bomb this or do something here. Those are the two, like if you look at that and then you see these people that are on the streets doing what they're doing, it's like, I don't get it. It does not compute with me. Like it's just like really, really terrible. And, you know, I think there is something to be said though, you know, like there's people out there that are just like peace-loving people, right? They don't want Palestinians to get killed. They don't want Israelis to get killed. I think everyone agrees with that generally. I mean, I do. I don't want to see innocent people get killed. But at the end of the day, when you see Hamas grabbing innocent civilians and hiding behind them,
Yeah.
You're stuck in a rock and a hard place there.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, good people have an obligation to stand up at
It
some
is.
point, or else it continues.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate your perspective on that. And by the way, you brought us a bottle of bourbon, which
I had to.
Is there a story behind this?
One of my Green Beret buddies gave it to me just recently, and I said, you know what, these guys might like this one. I've got,
I mean, this looks like a beautiful bottle.
yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
Hotel Tango.
There was another one. I'll have to try to get one for you. One of my buddies, who's a Green Beret, he has a distillery down outside of Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
He's Andy, if you're out there, buddy, we'll try to get these guys a bottle.
I love that.
These guys are awesome.
We're familiar with the Fort Campbell area, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Spent a lot of time in and around that spot. That's
Yeah.
great bunch of people.
Great Americans down there.
Totally. Absolutely. All right, so I got 3 questions for you before we
Go.
get you out of here. If you can plan your last meal on Earth, what would it be?
Oh, it would definitely have to be a New York strip.
There you
Medium
go.
rare.
Yeah, got it.
I'm a big steak guy. Got to.
Got to.
Any sides with that, or we're just going straight meat?
Oh no, I'm gonna go. If I'm gonna get a side, I'm gonna do like a lobster tail with it.
Yeah.
Oh, Outback Steakhouse style.
Yeah.
Like lobster tail for $6 on next to. That's where I'm going.
I mean, it's your last meal.
That's it.
You
Yeah.
can do whatever you
Yeah,
want.
I'm putting a lobster tail either on top of it or right next to it for sure.
Maybe a little bourbon.
Oh yeah, I mean that's gonna be the drink of choice for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Absolutely.
All right. So this question's going to hit a little differently with you. Typically, we ask people who've been in politics for a while if you can look back on your life with the benefit of blue sky. And you have this time period that you've dedicated to doing what you're doing, but you can fill it with anything you want with the benefit of retrospect. For you, that obviously goes back much further, and it's just sort of a blue sky question. You got 10, 15 years in the middle of your life knowing what you know now. What would you do with it? If you had to do something different.
If I had to do something different outside of politics, you know, I'd want to open a distillery.
Yeah, nice.
I when I say I'm a bourbon guy, I'm a bourbon
You're
guy.
a real bourbon
I'm
guy.
a real bourbon guy. Like I would open a distillery. I don't think it's gonna be able to match some of the stuff out there because there's just some of the stuff out there just
So good.
nowadays. Like,
And they spend so much time
Yeah.
tinkering, and it's a science experiment.
and if I had the time, I would try to do that, right? Like I
Yeah.
would try to tinker with it to make it to the level of some of these bourbons.
Right.
But like just to be able to have like a bourbon that has, you know, like Anderson on there
Yeah.
or, you know, like a Green Beret or like a Horse Soldier or
Yeah.
something awesome, I would want to do a distillery. I think that would just be fun. It'd be a good challenge too, you know, like because it's hard. It's not easy work out there. I think, I would own a distillery.
And there's a reward at the end.
Of course.
I mean, the bottle is just, it is
Oh,
what
yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
Yeah. And if it's good or it's bad, it still gets you drunk.
Yeah, right.
You know?
In the end, it does.
It's not a complete loss.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so third and final.
Yeah.
So our view is that almost all successful people are motivated by one of two things: the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. And it's not that anybody enjoys losing or anybody doesn't like winning. It's what motivates you to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always used Michael Jordan as the agony of defeat prototypical person that, you know, all the championships he won, he celebrated for like 3.5 minutes. But like, you know, you insult him on the court and he carries it around like a backpack for the rest of his life. So he's like an agony of defeat guy. A lot of examples of super successful thrill of victory people that are self-motivated. They do the stuff because they think they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
On those two poles, where do you think you find yourself, Derrick?
Whether or not I, you know, enjoy the agony defeat versus the victory.
Well, it's just like basically what motivates you to keep going.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's an esoteric question,
Yeah.
granted, but it's a good character.
So, because I've felt defeat before,
Yeah.
like let's be honest, you know, one of the things that really kind of sat with me the night of, you know, 2022 when I lost my primary, you know, my mom was in dead tears. You know, she was in dead tears. My family was there. My friends were there. My high school friends.
Yeah.
You know, college buddies. Everyone had driven in to Spotsylvania, and you know, it was one of those things where my mom was just in tears, and I was like, "Relax, Mom.
Yeah.
Like this is." I had to tell the first thing I told everyone was like, "This is not the worst day in my life.
Yeah.
It's not. You know, it's just one step. It's a hurdle. It's something that happened."
Yeah.
So, you know, the agony defeat really, you know, motivated me.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to continue to do stuff. And, you know, admittedly, when I first thought about doing this again, there was a lot of soul searching. You know, I talked to my mom. My mom's like, "You sure you really want to go back through this again?" And I was like, I guess misery loves company, Mom. Let's do it. So no, I think that was one of the things, being able to look across and seeing all the people that were there that supported me, and that continue to support me. It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like that night was a night, not my favorite night in the world.
Yeah.
But it's really cool now that, while I'm running, when I'm running around the district, and everyone goes, "Oh man, that sucked, but we're really happy that you're back in it." That part is like, okay, well, I must have done something right here. Like we're doing something right, and people believe in us.
Yeah.
I think that's really kind of what motivates me to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So Derrick, for those of us who want to support your campaign, help out, where do they go?
Yeah, folks can go to DerrickAnderson.com. It's DERRICK Anderson.com. It's got information on me. Obviously, we have places for people to sign up to help door knock, put signs out. Obviously, if people want to throw a little money in there, we're never going to complain about that. But
again, the most expensive house district in the country in 2022.
Democrats want it bad.
They do. So, but I think we're in a good spot, and we're going to keep chugging along and take the seat back.
I imagine you're getting a lot of veteran support.
Big time. Yeah. Quantico's right there in the middle of our district. So, I mean, the funniest ones are always when I knock on some Marines' door and I'm like, "Hey, I'm Derrick Anderson. I'm former Green Beret." And he goes, "Burp." We're devil dogs. I'm like, all right. Like, give me a break, guys. Give me a break. So,
Can you meet me halfway on this?
Man.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for running. It's really important, and you got a great voice to help advocate for people you grew up with, and I really hope you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, gents. Appreciate it. Seriously.
Thanks, Derrick.